See how it goes. All right. Let me load this presentation, slideshow from the beginning. All right, let's get going here. Awesome. You logged in too? All right, cool. All right, so again, today we're here to talk about and pretty much give you a full overview, both the what is it, why is it so great, but also the how do I use it, how do I install it, of the GWN7610, which is our first ever wireless access point. The wireless networking market is going to be one of the biggest expansions of Grandstream that we've had in quite a while. As I'm sure many of you who followed us over the years know, that we are constantly getting into new industries, and the main reason why we're doing that is to be able to give you as a reseller, as an installer, as an end user, or as a partner of Grandstream, to give you the ability to install complete business communication solutions all under one brand that you can purchase everything from one place. So obviously we're very well known throughout the industry for our VoIP products, IP phones, IP video phones, IP PBXs, gateways, ATAs, etc. We have a variety of video surveillance equipment. We have a variety of video conferencing solutions, and now we're adding wireless networking to that as well. So we start here with our GWN7610. Throughout the rest of the year, you're going to see a variety of other access points released from us, both lower end and higher end than what we have here. Towards the end of the year, you'll see some weatherproof outdoor access points. And later on, I'll tell you about one of our routers. We'll also be coming out with a whole group of routers. But one of the great things about our access points, as you'll see, is they work with any router, whether it be Grandstream or not. All right, so just to start off, what is the GWN7610? As I mentioned, it is a wireless access point that you're going to use to facilitate wired or wireless networks in large custom indoor areas. This is a plastic device, so it is not weatherproof. It is made for indoor use. Probably the best thing about this, as you'll see throughout today, is the easy centralized management interface, where you can basically control everything, set up this device, and up to 50 other devices from the user interface of just one of them. All right, so what really stands out about this device? The kind of the 5 things I have here are really, if you're going to take away anything from today's webinar, take away these 5 points. It offers tremendous range. And I guess the first thing I should say as I introduce this device is this device, the GWN7610, I would say is a mid-range access point. It's going to compete with mid-range access points, and I'll show you 2 of the popular ones that it competes with towards the end from very popular manufacturers. As I mentioned, we'll have a variety of other access points, both lower end than what you see here and actually higher end as well. So this device, specifically the 7610, offers really great range, 175 meters, which is 575 feet, and I'll show you later on that that is basically pretty much on par, if not higher, than what you're going to get from a lot of similar competitive or similar mid-range access points from other manufacturers. One of the great things that we're able to offer with this device is 16 different SSIDs. And for those of you that might be new to networking, an SSID is simply just a wireless network. So each one of our GWN7610 access points can offer up to 16 SSIDs or 16 different networks per device. You can have 16 different networks on every single device. You can have the same 16 networks on every single device. You can pick and choose therein. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but lots of flexibility there by supporting 16 SSIDs. The device supports really tremendous network speeds, again, especially for a mid-range access point. It's able to support 1.75 gigabits per second. Well, again, that's 1.75 gigs per second through the dual band Wi-Fi that it offers. So 450 megabytes on a 2.4 gigahertz connection per second, and up to 1,300 megabytes or 1.3 gigabytes on the 5 gigahertz connection. So also there to point out, does offer dual band Wi-Fi, both the 2.4 gigs and the 5 gig band. Controllerless management. Again, this is maybe one of the best things about this device. Controllerless management is something that has kind of just begun to be talked about on the Wi-Fi marketplace. The only other manufacturer that we have come across at the moment that is really utilizing this controllerless management is Cisco. Within the next 5 to 10 years, I think that you're going to see controllerless management is going to become the main way the Wi-Fi access points or Wi-Fi networks are managed. So what do I mean by controllerless management? With most other devices, historically, you have to purchase or use a separate piece of equipment or software known as the controller. That controller is basically the interface or the device that manages each access point. And with most of those controllers, you have to provision, configure, pair each access point individually. You can't do them as a group. What we have done is we have taken that controller functionality and we've built it into the web user interface for this product. It comes at no extra cost. There's nothing else that you have to buy, no other equipment you have to use. And by building the controller into the user interface, we allow you to actually set up, configure, manage up to 50 other Grandstream GWN access points. And some of our higher-end access points that you're going to see later on in the year, and our routers are going to be able to provision, manage, control, at least at the moment, up to 500 access points. So this controllerless management will be used throughout our GWN line of Wi-Fi access points and of routers, and we'll touch on this a little bit later on. Another great thing about this device is each one can support up to 250 concurrent clients per device. Obviously, if you need to support more devices in a specific area, you can simply put in more access points. Our access points, as we'll touch on later, give you the ability to basically roam from access point to access point if you have the same networks on multiple access points. You don't have to re-log in or reconnect to each access point as you leave one area and move to another. It will automatically do that for you. So those are really the feature highlights, the 5, in my opinion, the 5 biggest things to remember to take away about this device. Just to get it out of the way, in terms of hardware specifications, in terms of Wi-Fi standards, and I have a slide coming up for this, we're pretty much able to support every major Wi-Fi standard out there right now. 802.11ac being the newest and most advanced one, but we're also able to be very backwards compatible to support 802.11a, b, g, n, etc. The device, as you can see there, you may have seen the 3x3 MIMO icon on the last slide. You may have seen it on our data sheet. That speaks to the antennas, and this kind of shows you right there. You basically have 3 different antennas built into the device for each band. And basically what that allows it to do, you'll find a lot of other mid-range or even lower-end access points will either have only 1 or 2 antennas per band. We're able to output 3, and basically the thing to take away about this, you can Google 3x3 MIMO and get a really technical definition of what it is, but basically it just maximizes the amount of signals that the device can send and receive at the same time. You see the data rates obviously broken down per band. I will let you read those if you're interested on the specific Wi-Fi data rates actually not per band, per Wi-Fi standard. And as I mentioned, 802.11ac, the one there at the very top, is the most recent and pretty much the most powerful one. As you can see, it supports up to 1,300 megabytes, but if you're, or 1.3 gigs. But if you're using an older router, if you have an older network deployed that you just want to add some devices to, and you're using an older standard, we give you the ability to support those and customize those as well. Anything else here that's worth covering? We talked about the range, the clients. The device does have 2 Ethernet ports, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports built into it. It does have a USB port, a reset pin, and actually a Kensington lock. In case you want to lock it to something that it might be nearby, a ceiling panel or something like that. The USB port, I'll let Ernesto talk a little bit about that later, but the USB port is something that going forward, if you're using it with a router, or our future routers will support things like the ability for wireless printing, for wireless file sharing, etc. And that USB port will give you the ability to connect to those types of services. In terms of software, again, the 16 different SSIDs, 16 different networks per device, 250 clients, the Wi-Fi security, I'm going to talk about that. See the network protocols, supports IP version 4, 802.1q, 802.1p, 802.1x. Does offer you QoS, quality of service, VLAN, and TOS. We're going to talk about the embedded controller coming up. And it does actually offer an auto power saving mode, which gives you the ability to basically have the device self-power adaptation based on whether it detects PoE or PoE+. It will automatically switch over to that power supply instead. So I talked about this earlier. I can get through this pretty quickly here. Again, just basically the point here is we support the 802.11ac, also known as Wave 2. That's pretty much the most advanced. One of the newer Wi-Fi bands supports up to 1.3 gigs a second. But if you are using older networks or are on older networks or using older Wi-Fi devices that don't support AC, or your router doesn't support AC, we do pretty much are backwards compatible to support most of the older existing 802.11 Wi-Fi standards. So in terms of security encryption, the 6 security encryption technologies that you see here are all featured on the GWN7610. These are a wide range of different Wi-Fi encryption algorithms. Some of these are very standard throughout the Wi-Fi industry, but as you may have seen if you've attended other webinars for us in the past, very few of the mid-range access points that we compete with from well-known manufacturers, Ruckus, Ubiquiti, for example, very few of them actually support all 6 of these protocols that you see here. And then there are 4 on the next slide that are very unique to our device, things that we've gone above and beyond to build in extra protection that a lot of other APs don't offer at the moment. So just to kind of go through these real quickly, they're basically all various security algorithms or security standards, some to prevent the actual data exchange before the devices, between the access point and devices, some to actually protect the Wi-Fi clients, your computers, your cell phones, your tablets that are on the device, something to, the middle one there, WPA, WPA2, PSK. That's a big one. It actually creates authentication, basically a handshake and authentication between the actual access point and the device that's connected to it. Password authentication. WPA AES is an encryption technology that is required by banks, governments, financial institutions, built into this mid-range access point. Yeah, so that's pretty much the highlights there in terms of security encryption. Again, a lot of other similar mid-range access points are going to offer you various combinations of these 6, but I've come across very few that offer all 6. And then to add on to that, we have actually added these 4 pieces of encryption technology of high-end network protection. Many of these things are only found in very high-end access points, and some manufacturers don't even work with these types of security encryption. Basically, the anti-hacking security, critical data lockdown. You want to describe that, Ernesto? You did a better job explaining it than I did.
Yeah, basically this is talking about the software embedded into the access point. We're using an open source software, but of course, because we want the customer to use the web interface, we prefer to lock down the software. And of course, it's an encrypted software that is protected so no one can hack into it and make some changes to the software.
Yeah, it basically creates checks and balances within the device. If one part of the device senses that something's off or something's off in another part of the device in the different software layers or whatnot, it will shut down and it will lock down all of your data so that it can't be hacked. The 2 bottom ones at the bottom of the screen are much easier to describe, the unique security certificate per device. What that means is that every Wi-Fi client that you connect to the GWN7610, your cell phone, your tablet, your computers, any device, every single device that connects to it will be extended a unique security certificate, whereas with most other manufacturers, it's going to be the same security certificate per device. So other manufacturers will have one common security certificate that is applied to every endpoint or every Wi-Fi access point, every Wi-Fi client that connects to it. And because of that, because they use the same security certificate, if you're able to hack through it once, you're able to hack into every device, every Wi-Fi client on that network, whereas ours offers different security certificates. So even if somebody is able to hack into one, every other device has a completely different certificate. The last one there, the random default password per device, that is basically the administrative password that you would use to log in to make changes to the platform or to anything like that. And so the comparison here is we put a different password on every single device, and it is randomly generated. You obviously have the ability to go in and change it. But what a lot of other manufacturers do here is the password for each device is something common, like the MAC address or its serial number, where it's very predictable, very easy to figure out what it is and hack into it, whereas ours, it's a different password for every GWN7610 interface, completely random, not based on anything or any pattern, for example. All right, moving along here, I'll be able to wrap up here in about the next 5 minutes, and then we'll move into the technical. So one of the best things, as I've mentioned throughout, one of the best things I've mentioned about this device, and truly one of the best aspects of it, and one of the most unique things that we're doing here, is this controllerless management that I talked about. So we are able to allow you to set up, provision, manage up to 50 Grandstream GWN70 or 70, any Grandstream GWN device now or in the future. The GWN7610 can set up, provision, manage, and control up to 50 of them. So that means you can set up one access point, and then from that same user interface, add 50 others. It prevents you from having to go touch each access point or deal with a specific interface for each access point individually. It creates one centralized area where you can basically monitor your entire network, make changes to it, add access points to it. And as I mentioned earlier, with most other manufacturers and historically within Wi-Fi, you have specific controllers, whether it be hardware or software, that have to be used to manage, set up, control each access point individually. So not only is it separate software or hardware you have to buy or use, but you also then have to touch each access point individually, where ours is centrally located within the user interface. We don't charge you anything extra for it, and you can use it to set up and control up to 50 other access points. So to be completely honest with you, the feedback that I get and a lot of the questions we end up getting when we're talking about this are actually that people seem to not believe that it actually does this, which honestly, I completely understand it. We're a newer company within the Wi-Fi marketplace, so a lot of people just kind of see that, hey, how are you guys doing something so different and so much better than what a lot of other companies are doing? I promise you, this functionality works. It is great. It is so easy to use. We have a video on our website, actually it's on our YouTube page, and then within one of our blog posts that shows you how to do this in about 1.5 minutes, how to take advantage of everything I just showed you, and Ernesto will show you this later on. So yeah, I think I've pretty much described this whole idea of the controllerless technology. Basically, the way to think about it is that you're creating an initial GWN7610 to be the master on the network, which controls all the other GWN7610s, and the common tech word is that the devices being managed by the master would be known as slaves. Here's the 5 steps that you would go to actually, basically all you have to do is initially plug in a GWN7610 that you want to be the master. First one you access will become the master. The device will basically, the setup wizard will run and it will pretty much set up the device as the master. You can create a network name, a device name, and specific network groups if you want. Then you just give a password to that master, plug other access points into the same network. It will automatically discover those, and you're just going to click a little link button to add them, and I'll let Ernesto show you this, at least walk you through that a little bit later. But again, basically 4 or 5 really quick and easy steps to not just create one as the master, but then to pair up to 50 other access points. All right, so just to wrap up here real quickly, 3 common deployment scenarios, just to kind of wrap everything up in terms of what I've been talking about and tell you about what are the features of this device that makes it so great for each one of these. Kind of spans the whole range from a small office back to a bigger company with multiple branch offices. In terms of the small office, it's a great option because you can set the same networks, the same SSIDs, and the same access credentials across all your access points, so that when somebody moves from one side of the office to the other, they don't have to switch networks. They're going to have the same access to the same networks with the same credentials across every access point within the company. It allows you to move anywhere in the office without using internet or lose your connection. The multiple floor office, the great thing about the GWN7610 here is, contrary to the first one where I told you have the same networks, the same SSIDs, same credentials on every device, for the multiple floor office, you can have obviously up to 16 different access points, or excuse me, 16 different networks per access point, and you can have many different access points. So you can have specific networks set up for each team within your company, for visitors, for your security department, etc. You can have those, all up to 16 of those networks on each access point. You can there set it up so, in case your sales team needs to move from floor to floor, you can have that sales network on a bunch of different access points on different floors so that they can move around without switching, without having to re-log in. But you also are able to offer up to 15 other different networks with 15 different credentials there too. And then with the multiple branch offices, the big thing here is the VPN, which we're obviously able to support. VPN is really set up by the router itself. All of our routers will support VPN. And this is, again, just basically creating a VPN connection or tunnel between two physical locations, and those VPNs can be extended as a wireless network through our GWN7610. Just allows you to share networks, share resources, share network resources between different physical locations. Last two slides from me here real quickly. I just want to show you a real quick comparison of our GWN7610 to a Ruckus and a Ubiquiti device. I realized that we've gotten some feedback that we actually have the wrong name listed for that Ubiquiti device, so I do apologize for that. But you kind of get an example of what I'm talking about here. These are all what I would consider to be mid-range devices. All three of them are basically able to offer you pretty much the same network throughput. Our device is able to pretty much be on the high end of the range there. We're able to offer you 4 times more SSIDs or networks per device than the Ubiquiti device. We have that embedded controller, which gives you the ability to manage up to 50 GWN7610s. Specifically with the Ubiquiti device, that requires the external controller software that I was talking about, requires you to basically touch each access point individually. And then we add quite a bit of security protection. And then you see the bottom line there. This retail price is in US dollars, I should point out. So you're basically able to see that we are able to offer the same network speeds, a lot more security, more network customization, and much easier installation and management than any of these well-known, very popular devices. Especially if you look at that Ruckus device, how much that costs, $800. You could buy 5 or 6 of our GWN7610 for the price of one of theirs, which pretty much would negate the one advantage they have, which is they support more clients. You can buy 2 of our devices and spend not even half the amount of one of those, and you'll get the same amount of client support. All right, so with that, we're going to turn it over to Ernesto to walk you through the technical part of the training. So just bear with us here for a second as we transfer control.
I'm going to use the cable.
Okay. We transfer control of the presentation.
You can keep it. I'm just going to turn it up. Yeah.
We're going to pair back here for a second.
All
How's
right.
everybody doing?
So in the meantime, while connecting my computer, I'm going to show you quickly one of our access points right here. So basically, it comes on the back over here. You're going to see all the ports, reset button, power connector, 2 Ethernet ports, one with PoE, the other one is for your network connection, and a USB port. At the same time, it comes with a mount. I have one right here. That is super easy to install. So basically, you install this in the wall or in the ceiling, and then basically just snap in your access point. Super easy to install. So I'm going to be showing the web interface of this particular access point. Let me switch to my screen. All right, so before accessing the web interface, obviously the first question you have is what is the IP address? So you need to download an application from our website, or you can open your browser and use a standard URL, which is basically the word GWN the last 6 digits of the MAC address of your access point, dot local. When you enter that in your browser, you're going to find the access point. Now, if you don't have that, if you don't know it at that time, you can download the application. Basically, you select your interface, and then click scan, and obviously it's going to scan the network to detect any Grandstream access point in the network. So here, for example, you can see the MAC address and the IP address, and most important, the firmware version. All right, so let's stop it. Now we know the IP address. You can enter in your browser, and then you can access the web interface. By the way, this presentation is with the latest beta firmware 2.15. You can see that in the upper left corner. You can download it since a few days ago. It's available on our website, firmware.grandstream.com. You can download it and install it in your access point. A lot of improvements in the overview or status page. Now you can see on the top left corner, you can see how many access points are in the network. Okay, so how many are discovered, how many are online and offline. So for this example that I'm doing today, I have only one at this time, and eventually I'm going to connect the second one so I can show you the connectivity process. So I am going to show you also how to access, bear with me. Let me refresh. So at the first time that you log in, you're going to see the wizard. I'm not going to go over the whole wizard because I want to show you how to do this manually, but at least I'm going to show you how, as Phil mentioned, we have a video on our YouTube channel where you can basically set up a couple access points as a master and a couple of slaves within a couple clicks, or I think a minute and a half, right?
Yeah.
So you basically click on next, you select the country where you are for the time zone and settings, and then you click next again. You're going to see, eventually, you're going to see all the access points detected in the network. Obviously, this one that I'm logged in is going to become the master. If you see other access points listed here, then you're going to click on the action button to make that one as part of the your network. So what we call the slave. And then lastly, when you click on next, eventually you're going to have multiple access points. You're going to have the choice. You can select what access points are going to be part of this default SSID. But again, this is only to make a full network available within a few clicks. I'm not going to be doing that. So for now, I'm just going to show you the overview. As I said before, top left corner, all the access point availables. On the next block, you can see how many clients are connected per band. That's very important. On the right-hand side, we added this option. It's very important so to avoid, for example, you may have some clients in an area that is congested, connected with the channels that are occupied already. So in here, you can see, as you know, 2.4 support 13 channels, where the channels more recommended to use are number 1, 6, and 11. So here you can see that we are using that particular channel. Eventually, if you see that a channel is being used, and then based on the Wi-Fi survey tools that you may have, you see that that channel is too congested, then you can come to the access point and allocate a specific channel of your preference. I'm going to get into more details later on. And of course, 5 gigs, you're going to see all the channels available. Next, you have the top access points. So unfortunately, I don't have any data, but eventually you can see the usage. So let's say that you have 2, 3, 4 access points. You're going to see them all by MAC address or by name. and then most important, the usage, the up and downstream usage in kilobits or maybe megabits per second. And then on the right-hand side, as Phil mentioned before, you can have up to 15 SSIDs, 16, sorry, and then you can see the usage per SSID. At the bottom left, same thing, but for a client. So you're going to find out who is that guy that is downloading or wasting all your bandwidth. So you're going to pinpoint the MAC address here. You can assign a name, by the way. I'm going to show you that in a few. So you can identify the clients that are using more the bandwidth. All right, this one you can get this software out of our website, which includes the new overview page. Now let me connect a second access point so I can do a full demo. All right. In the meantime, in access point, obviously you have the one that you are logged in, which is your master. So if you click on edit, you're going to see basic information about that product, in particular MAC address, firmware version, etc., link speed and what port is connected. Eventually, when you have clients, you can see what channels are in use, how many users count per band. Then you go to users. Then from this menu, you can see the user. You can click on the user and assign a name to it. For example, you find a MAC address, you can click on there, and then you can enter Ernesto's laptop. So then you know that that particular MAC address belongs to Ernesto. And lastly, under configuration, you can assign a particular device name. So you may have multiple access points. One is in the front, in the living room, for example, or in the front door, or whatever area it is. So you can add a name into that access point. For fixed IP, so as you know, the access point is on the DHCP client. So you need to connect the access point into a network that has DHCP available already. But if you want, you can also use static IP by selecting this option. Frequencies, as Phil mentioned before, it's a dual band, but you can also force a particular band, either 2.4 or 5, and then base it on the bands. So if you want to use 2.4, then you can change the type of frequencies or frequencies that are supported between BG and N. Same thing for 5, which obviously you'll support only AC, 802.11ac. The channel width, and this is important, the channel allocation. So as I mentioned before, right now by default the channel allocation is automatic, but eventually in your deployment, if you see that a particular channel is being too congested by other SSIDs in the area, then you can come in this menu right here and select the particular channel that you want to enforce. The same thing applies for the 5 gigs band. Then you have power, radio power, obviously highly recommended to keep it in high, but depending on your environment or installation, you may want to reduce the power, let's say because you have an open space in the office next door that you don't want people to start kind of seeing your SSID. So you can reduce the power because you know that the range of that power is has enough coverage for your office deployment. All right, so let me go quickly and show you how to discover an access point. Basically, it's showing right now. This is the second access point that I added, that I connected. Is on the latest firmware. This is the MAC address and IP address. The only thing you need to do is click on the action button, and that's it. Now you have that access point as a slave, configured as a slave. As you can see over here, it's being provisioned as we speak. Then it's going to go offline, and eventually will go online. From this same menu, in the meantime, you can also push or upgrade the firmware to a particular access point. So eventually you purchase one, and then you can see on the firmware column that is using an outdated firmware. So then you can select that, and then click the upgrade button. By the way, the firmware server path is configured in another menu that I will show you in a minute. For the second access point that we just added, you have the same menu as I showed you before. You can reboot the devices. Now, for network groups, I mean, by default, let's say a typical installation, you have only one network. Right now, it's basically my access point, my slave, and the master. Both are tied. Both are paired, sorry. Now you need to, let's call it, synchronize them or put them together under the same network group. So you can change the network group, for example, data network, whatever you want to call it. On the Wi-Fi, you can also change the SSID. You need to enter a password. And as Phil was mentioning before, you can select the security mode of your preference. Then lastly, under device membership, this is where you can, this is the master, of course, and eventually you may have multiple slave or multiple access points that you need to put together under the same membership. So they belong to that particular network that you named over here. Then you click Save, and well, I'm going to click the Apply button right now. So it's a nice option that when you, every time that you make changes, click the Apply button, and you're going to see sort of like the status of everything that is being pushed and provisioned. This information is being pushed to all the access points that are under the same controller. And eventually, you can add other SSIDs. Remember, you can have up to 16 SSIDs. If your network supports multiple VLANs, then you can have one SSID for, let's say, the data network or the data VLAN. Then you can create a second SSID, let's call it for the guest VLAN. So when you do that, the only thing you need to enter, you need to have the VLAN set up already in your network, by the way. You enable the SSID, you enter the name. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so basically you have, remember, you may have eventually multiple groups. You can enter a second SSID, guest, for example. You enable that here, and then use the same settings to create a second SSID. All right, now let's move on to the client. So I wish I have anything, but this is a brand new device out of the box. Let's see if I can connect to it so we can show you some data. Okay, should be this one, and I have the password that I set up already. Hopefully I typed the right one. All right, so now I'm connected to this SSID, and you can see the client, right? This is my laptop's MAC address, the radio and channel that I'm using, the time that I've been online, and the MAC address of the access point that I'm connected. Remember, this SSID has two access points. For this demonstration, both access points are in the same area, in the same room, but eventually they may be in different rooms or even floors. And that's why, for troubleshooting purposes, you would like to know in what access point that particular client is connected to. If you go to edit, what things that you can do is basically name it, you know, Ernesto's laptop, for example. So when Ernesto's laptop is using a lot of bandwidth, remember from the overview page, you can see who is that guy. So you can go quickly. And the throughput and aggregated data, you can see that here. Lastly, are we good on time? So let me get to the system settings. Typical information, you can change the password, admin and user. You can enter a syslog server, although the latest firmware, by the way, I think the previous one introduced that already. We can use the local flash to store the syslog. But I mean, it has some limited space. If you really want to troubleshoot an access point, then you can enter a syslog server here and select the syslog level, and everything's going to be pushed to the network, to that particular server. Access point support, SIP ALG, time zone, NTP server, authenticate. Oh, so all our access points are using the same provisioning mechanism or schema that all the Grandstream products are using. That means that we use the same protocol, using HTTP, HTTPS, and TFTP. And for firmware server, you enter that right here, config server path right here. Basically, you can generate a config file that applies to multiple access points, so you can provision multiple access points in one shot. And then at the bottom, you have options, so you can reboot the access point, you can upgrade it. Remember that I showed you? If you want to upgrade this particular access point, then you click the Upgrade Now. You can download the configuration, upload it again, reboot it, and do a factory reset. What else? For troubleshooting, let's go through that quickly. Very important, when opening a ticket with Grandstream, please come to this menu, go and turn on the syslog, turn on the debugging options. When you get the logs, upload it into the support ticket, okay? But for your own record, for your own troubleshooting, then obviously you can enter what interface you are debugging. You can put a cap size of the file that is being generated. Remember, access point has a limited space. Source port, I mean, some filtering options about IP address, destination port, protocols, etc. And then you hit the start button, and everything is recorded, logged. Then at the bottom, you have the option where you can retrieve the syslog files. Eventually, if the device crashes, you can download the core dumps here, so you can share it with Grandstream support, and then a ping and trace route, typical in devices like this. We added support for SNMP. You have the advanced page over here where you can add your servers, enter the transport type and IP address, so the device can push the SNMP data. Same thing for V3, all the settings about SNMP. And that basically wrap it up. We have an option at the bottom about alert and notifications. So every time that you doing something, making changes, anytime that you hit the apply button at the top, everything is logged, So for security, not only for troubleshooting, but for security, you want to know what time was the last time that something was applied to the device. So you can get that information from the logs, from the alert notifications. All right, so I think I kind of covered the basic stuff. Going back to the overview, now you can see my laptop over here. You can see the download and upload data, that type of information that I was showing you before. What else we have? We support Chinese and English. Eventually, we're going to increase that to multiple languages. This is the refresh interval. And we have a help and a search option. I hope that I covered the basic stuff. I know the field covered a lot of the technical part, information. If you have more questions about this, the product is available already. If you have any technical questions, feel free to open a support ticket at grandstream.com, and we will be able to support you on any questions regarding this product. I think that covers everything. Now we're going to move on to the questions and answer. Phil's going to help me with that. If I'm not able to answer all the questions, we have your information, your emails, so we're going to do our best to send you an email to answer those questions.
Cool. Thanks, Ernesto. Yeah, let's go through some questions. But as you can see, or hopefully you just saw from what Ernesto just showed everyone, this whole interface is so streamlined, so easy to use, while still giving you access to all those high-end networking features. All right, so there's been a couple of questions that have come in through the chat that I'll go through and read now. If you have any questions based on what you saw or anything you're just curious about, feel free to send that over. So the first question is from Dave, and Dave's asking, can you support different rate limits per network? For example, the secure employee network gets 20 megs per second, but the open public network gets 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be bandwidth limitation. We don't support it. So basically, you need to enable that on the network side. So basically, when you create your VLANs, then you can allocate those network limitations. Bandwidth limitations.
Cool. Asim, sorry if I'm saying that name incorrectly, is asking about a handing over mechanism, and I believe you mean like a roaming feature. And you can probably speak to this, but my understanding of that is that usually the roaming is actually on the Wi-Fi client, not on the access point itself.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Depending on the client is able to switch from one access point to the other one. However, because both access point or multiple access point are under the same controller, then the controller can also help to, let's say, transition the data from one to the other one. A good example is when you are using a cell phone with a soft phone, Grandstream Wave, for example, and then you are registered to your server, to your PBX, you are using Wi-Fi on your cell phone, you are connected to one access point. You can have a phone call and voice and audio. Your audio is going to be okay while transitioning or roaming from one access point to the other one.
Cool. Just to mention, there's somebody, Michael in the chat pointed out that some other brands do ship their APs with PoE injectors in the box or included. And as I mentioned in the chat, but I want to say it out loud, we are in the process of testing PoE injectors, and within the coming months, I would expect those to be available with our access points. Yep. All right, Zach's asking, will we be adding in future firmware upgrades the ability to have guest networks with login pages and basically you have to agree to terms of service before you access the internet?
Yeah, it's in a roadmap. It's not supported at the moment, but yes, we understand that for hotels, for example, sometimes they want to add that feature, so you want to have a paid service or a paid landing page where you can enter your login information. Currently, it's not supported, but yes, you can have multiple SSIDs with that purpose. Back to the PoE, yes, we don't support any PoE injector, but because the access points support PoE with 801.11ac standard, so any PoE injector supporting that standard should be compatible with the device. Eventually, or maybe already, we are going to have on our website a list of passive PoE injectors that can also be used with our access points.
Awesome. Also, regarding the client, or the login pages, I know that I believe our routers are going to support that, including the one coming out, so I wouldn't be surprised if that feature is rolled out when the routers start coming out, which should be in the next couple of months. All right, Robert is asking if he can create a guest network without access to the local network, only for internet access.
Yes, that is client isolation. It's supported. Let me see if I can show you that quickly. On the client. Client isolation. So in this particular SSID, if you enable that option over here, then you should be able to isolate your client from one SSID to the other SSID.
Awesome. Van is asking or saying they want to send certain SSIDs to a walled garden. Is there any way to use different gateways to different SSIDs?
I'm not too sure about that one. It doesn't ring a bell. I don't think it's supported, but I may have to double check that one for you.
Carlo is asking if the GWN7610 can be set up in a desktop configuration.
In a desktop configuration, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if you could provide, give us some more guidelines or more of an idea of what you're trying to do, and we can certainly address that. Van is asking if they can use an AP as a network client to another AP, WDS or other.
WDS or yes. I mean, no, I'm sorry. The Grandstream GWN7610 controller works for Grandstream access points only.
Awesome. Yes, that is something important to point out. As I mentioned very early on, and we can mention it again here as we're about to wrap up, our routers will work with any, our access points will work with any routers in case you have an existing network and you just want to add some on, or you already have a router, you don't want to buy a new one. Ours will work with any routers that you have. Any final questions?
So before that, if you don't have any questions, remember that Phil mentioned about any software to do a Wi-Fi survey. So, I mean, there's something that I normally use for doing a survey, Acrylic. So download it. I believe it's a free application where you can survey your office or environment. So you can see how many SSIDs are, let's say, in the air. Maybe using the same channel as your Grandstream access point. So in that way, you can avoid using the same channel and manually change it. Although the access point has an automatic option that is detecting. I don't know exactly how the algorithm works, but it's supposed to utilize the channel less congested. But still, for more troubleshooting, you can use this tool to manually, so then you can manually change the channel on the access point.
Cool. All right. Last looks like two more, and so Van is clarifying that when in terms of the using the AP as a network client to another AP, he meant does the network need to be only through the wired backhaul? And I apologize if I might be reading this incorrectly.
Well, maybe he's referring about some access point. They have a how do you call it? That they can work as an access point wirelessly. So they are a Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi extender. So we don't support that. You need to connect the access point through the wire to your network in order for the access point to transmit the Wi-Fi repeater. That's what I meant. So it's not a Wi-Fi repeater. It needs to be connected to the wire.
And he just said mesh question mark, but I think that. Yep, okay. There you go. All right, cool. Glad we got that answered for you, Van. Carlo is asking about Apple support. I'm assuming that you mean like Apple clients, and of course, we'll support any Wi-Fi client. I guess maybe the other answer there could be, can you run this user interface on Apple devices?
Yeah. I mean, this is a web interface.
Yeah.
So any browser with any operating system should work fine.
All right, last question from Carlo. He's asking, ceiling mount and wall mounted, can you set it up placed on a desk? I see no reason.
On a desk, probably talking about the beam power strength, or how the beam or the signal is going to be pushed out to the environment. I mean, if the device is put on a desk, by the way, this is omnidirectional antenna, so you can put it any way you want, and then the transmission is going to be evenly regardless of the position of the device. So yes, you can have the access point on a table. The ceiling or the wall mount can still be attached to the device. I mean, like the one that I have right now, it has the wall mount connected, and I have the access point on the table.
Awesome. Yeah, good point to end on there that we didn't make at any point in time. This device is omnidirectional, so the signal will extend in any direction regardless of how it's mounted. All right, with that wraps up today's webinar. Really appreciate everybody being with us here today to learn a little bit about our GWN7610, how it's set up, and kind of what's so great about it. So yeah, we did record this webinar. Early next week, I will upload this to our YouTube page, and I'll send an email out to everybody. You can also head on over to the Training Center section of our website. If you go to grandstream.com, click the Support tab. At the very bottom, you'll see Training Center. It'll give you all of the future upcoming training webinars. We're having a couple of more on this topic. We have a couple of coming up on our GXW gateways and ATAs, which is something we've actually never done training webinars before. You can also go to events, and under events you'll see trainings, which will have all the in-person trainings, which we have a ton over the next couple of months going on. And also, if you're looking for additional training opportunities, talk to your local Grandstream distributor. We're working with them throughout the world to do more trainings to give you guys more resources and tools for trainings. All right, so again, thanks everybody for being with us. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.